Okay, welcome everybody to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting. Welcome everyone online. Councillor Loudon, would lead us in a prayer, please.
Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Before I call for apologies, I'd like to note that this is Mr. Law's last finance meeting, and that we are very grateful to have him for all of his experience and knowledge in guiding us on this in between the transition from Mr. Blooms, and that we all appreciate how much work he's done in this space. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies. I have apologies from the chair. Councillor Dalgety and Councillor Carter is leaving early. Are there any other?
Councillor Power, there's been a family tragedy.
She's not a member.
Yeah, but she asked me to pass on apologies for all the council.
I will move that from the chair. Can I get a second?
Have you seconded?
Thank you. Deputy Mayor. All in favour? Against? Carried. Do we have a public forum?
No.
No public forum. Conflict of interest declarations. If anybody has any conflict of interest declarations, to bring it up now or when the matter is brought up. Thank you. Confirmation of order of business. Are we following the order of business? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Item 6. Please bring us through this.
No, you just, yeah.
Okay. Are there anything from the minutes from the last meeting that anybody wants to bring up?
And move that they be sure and correct.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Brian. Excellent. All in favour? Against? Carried. And follow up action, page 15. 15.
Yes, Chair, there's 2 items on there. The first one is on the order paper today. And the second one, not sure if there's been any further updates.
Thank you. Is there any questions, comments on the follow-up action? Worship.
Just make the point that in progress has been in progress for a very long time.
Thank you.
Can I just ask on that one? I'm not sure what more that I could do for that one, because we did go through with QV, as you recall. And if there's individual properties, happy to make those inquiries and follow up, but I'm not sure that there's any process.
The issue is that QV won't have picked up these properties that we've already identified. And if there are a number of properties that were picked up by sheer chance, I think there is probably value in somebody literally driving the roads. They would only need to find one further property that hasn't been rated to justify the actions. So whether this is this could be a student job over a summer, literally with being able to access our database. In fact, they would need to access our database because you can just go and look at a rate position. So you'd literally be able to drive past a house and say, that's a house on such and such a road, and what's its valuation? So the properties, QV won't pick it up.
QV will, through you, Mr. Chairman, QV pick it up at a time when somebody gets it registered as for a sale. But admittedly, that may be some time. But the person that you'd have to get to do that would have to have some expertise to be able to judge a house. It probably wouldn't be a student that didn't have any knowledge in that area. And I think when we asked the QV, it was something that hasn't been done. But happy to do that. That's what's wanted.
What happens with CCCs is that QV automatically get told CCC has been issued from our inventory department. They actually get a full list. And I'm pretty certain the rates officer also has a list of them and checking to see that came in. So I'm aware that one got missed and it had to be a mistake. A very unusual situation for it to have occurred.
We've had multiple ones, and 3 of them I discovered by chance. So these are properties that there was a mistake or poor process, whatever. The houses were built, they complied by and large with building plans and consents, but never added to the database.
I think the most pragmatic thing for you to do is for this rates officer to also have a list and make sure that those that have been issued with CCCs are actually being valued and get onto the DVR. I don't see the point of someone driving around the streets, because they'd have to know which streets to drive, and that would be difficult to work out. I think it'd be far better to have that double check with the rates officer also checking.
I just strongly suspect there are likely to be other properties. We know that there are some properties that also are not rated because they never receive final sign-off, but continue to be occupied. So in terms of the process, and it's not common, it's common, I think, for other councils as well. So for instance, I could point you to a property in Bulls, for example, that took out a building consent, never completed sign off for the building, and it's then occupied. And sure, they won't get insurance and those sorts of details, but effectively they're not being rated either. And then we have properties that are built on land that we don't have a legal description of in terms of our entity. So if they're built on road reserve or rail reserve, and I can think of another property in that position, that a house that has never been rated because they're sitting on a designation. And there's a whole, I mean, I could go on, but
Your Worship, do you think we could take that to a workshop of some sort? Because perhaps the councillors or the community would be involved at that level rather than students or some other.
yeah, I do accept the comment that it takes somebody with a little bit of understanding and possible local knowledge so that you can drive past a whole series of houses, and that's unlikely to be in that situation because it seems to be a certain time period that may have been common. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there, but I think we're missing an opportunity.
Through you, Chair, it was just great to comment. The status comment of this item and the follow-up is in progress. Clearly, it should remain as in progress, and clearly I'm hearing from His Worship the Mayor that he has some individual properties that he'd like some further investigation on, and perhaps that could be taken up at some other stage. But obviously, it's a matter that should remain in progress on the status report.
Is there a particular, workshop that you may recommend?
I just think it's a discussion that the mayor needs to have with some staff at some stage, so he can identify some properties, and they may be able to actually look a little bit further at those individual ones to see if it's something that's an ongoing problem that does need further investigation.
I just need to be very clear here to the deputy mayor that I'm not aware of any other further properties at the moment, but the fact that I have found 3 by chance indicates to me there's likely to be more.
Councillor Loudon?
Just to comment with the government's new initiative of for simple build or non-complex builds, having plumbers and builders sign off their own work as opposed to going through council. With the CCCs, would there be some disarray within that process, and would therefore the communication with QV and valuation and getting these properties registered for rates, could that be an issue down the track with this new initiative?
Until the legislation comes out, I expect it's not going to be, particularly, is that more discussion? Councillor Moore, before you wish it.
Yeah, I think it's an operational issue that obviously there's consents for these buildings, and if they're not signed off and rated, then the rating officer or the building inspector should be signing off on those, so they do get on the rating platform if it's that issue. Yeah, so it's an operational one in my view.
Would you want to have
Councillor Loudon's quite right. That opens up the opportunity in terms of the proposed changes by government, which could complicate the matter further. But don't forget for a second, the granny flats legislation also kicks in. So that you are required, if you build a granny flat, to notify council of the completion of it, but you don't require consents. And the penalty for non-notification is very low and would be rapidly offset by the fact that you're not paying rates. So it's going to get worse. And we have a number of those granny flat type positions in our district of buildings that are also not rated.
Thank you, Your Worship. We will, as Deputy Mayor has indicated, discuss this at some other venue, some other time. But yes, it's an ongoing process. Thank you. I move from the chair that it's be received. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Albert. All in favour? Against? Carried. Chair's report has been circulated to you this morning. I won't read it out, except that it's this time of change. We need to make some decisions that will be in this committee meeting as well as the next workshop. But it's just outlining that we need to probably examine ourselves very carefully because things have changed. I move my report be tabled, be received. Brother seconder, Councillor Moore, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're up to now. Reports for decisions. Page 17. Carryovers. Are we having Mr. Law?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was put together by late, so that's why it's not a full report like you've had in the past. It's just basically a list of projects that were identified by staff. And with some explanations out the side for benefit of council. I'd point out that that anything over 100,000 requests for carryover is on the list of projects that we're going to be discussing in the workshop after this meeting. So, you've got the ability to the top 3 will not be discussed at the following meeting because they're all what we call operational projects, so this committee needs to rule on those. So you've got the district plan review, St John's Ambulance, Hunterville, and the special projects CCTV. So those three projects are not capital projects, and the committee needs to consider those at this meeting. Well, whatever that.
Yes, does anyone have any questions, comments about those three items? Councillor Moore?
Our question is for the top 500 odd thousand unspent, do we really need that to go forward now? Or, and I notice it's a grant, so if we don't use it, do we lose it?
Your worship?
This is subject to further information that's going to come back to council this afternoon as part of TIP's report as well.
It's going to be council.
Through you, Chair. So the short answer to your question is yes, we definitely need the funding. A chunk of that funding is part of our Better Off grant that we always intended to stage, that we just didn't stage in the budgets. I would note that you do have a report on your agenda later today for council around the district plan review, the urban growth phase. And we definitely do need all of this funding to do the technical reports needed to complete that work. So we are right on track in terms of spending that funding.
I can make an observation through you, Mr Chair. This is, I think the district plan is one that you probably could be spending more money on, because I think a number of developments and proposals that I've seen in my time here are going through processes that probably would be picked up by going through an updated district plan. Don't know when it was actually done, but some are very outdated and are capturing a lot of projects and developments that people are wanting to do. It's behind the eight ball. We are behind the eight.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Just a supplementary, that grant though is a grant, you know, isn't coming out of capital funds. And
So through you, Mr. Chair, so it's mostly grant funding. We do have around $150,000 per year of council funding into that. And we did have that as part of our Better Off application, that we would contribute that amount as well. So it's part Better Off grant and part a council carry forward as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Worship?
No, I just, Trina's absolutely correct. This the following paper and council this afternoon that should be dealt with there.
Right. There's, if the rest is being dealt with this afternoon, do we need to dwell on this report?
No, just the district plan. One.
Oh,
just those ones that are going on.
Right, yeah, I'll don't, yeah, but it's something we'll go through to the workshop next. Councillor Moore?
yeah, I've just got one question, not about the funding, but the comments that property team short staff for 6 months, blah, blah, blah. Is that being resolved or being resolved?
I'll just make a point here. You might not have seen the email. So the commentary that was included in the first agenda that went out shouldn't have been put in the agenda. So you would have been sent a subsequent one. It's called updated. So some of that was just internal discussions when the table was being forwarded. Yeah. So it's really just for staff.
To answer Councillor Gregg's question though, is that has been the staff and error to catching up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
I just have a question going back to the special project CCTV. That is that the project that's been run through the Taipa Community Development Trust, and basically it's updating security cameras for the district with the police?
Yeah, I understand that's the case, yeah.
And so this is budget we've put against it from the council, and it hasn't been spent yet because that's an ongoing project.
It's my understanding as well, but we'll confirm that. Kaylin chance.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I think, looking at this report, I think it's quite detailed in the list of the projects that that may or may not need to be carried forward. And I think there are a number of them that we could stop and say, you know, if we're carrying them forward into the next financial year, are they in fact actually going to be done? And if they're not going to be done, why should they be there? And are we even going to do them? Because some of these actually have been probably carried forward 2 or 3 times, I suspect. So my question is, without going through them line by line, and if we were to approve these as a list of carry forwards, could it be subject to a more detailed workshop review before they go forward? I understand that these are the works that are in progress at the moment, but I just think there's a little bit more detail that needs to be discussed on some of these projects. And I want the committee to understand. We've just looked at the first couple of lines there and it's already raised a couple of questions. And my question is, how can we accept that these are the works in progress, which effectively they are? How can we approve them to be carried forward for a further discussion? And what would the process of that actually be?
So I guess the over $100,000 will be discussed in the next workshop, but
I think if anybody have any that they want to flag or anybody or ask any questions of, then we could put them to the workshop as well. I know Councillor Dave, you have a few, but the reality is I think we could tick those off and the people should be here that are able to give an answer straight away. Some of them, in my view, are quite clear. Others need an answer. So I think that would be an appropriate way for me.
Yeah, and I'm happy to approve them as a list of carry forwards, because it's appropriate to do that because they are there, they are real. What I'd like to be able to do is actually understand how we can, and if we carry them forward now, when can we discuss them before it comes to a commitment through to a council decision?
Hopefully we should be able to do that today.
Yeah.
In the
We
workshop.
can, if there's some that we could answer now, we're more than happy to do that.
Just ask a question, Mr. Chairman, just to clear things up on that question there. In other words, if we approve the whole list of carryovers, but we do the workshop and decide to remove some of them, what you're asking, councillor, is how do we then confirm that that is the actual list that's carried over? Is that another resolution that comes to council?
That's what I'm seeking to do because I think there's some greater understanding of what some of these projects are.
The idea of that, the way that we've set this up is that they would go to the council meeting later this afternoon.
Yes, after further discussion. So my point being is we could approve these for certain discussion in the workshop. That's what I'm seeking to understand.
Bearing in mind that there was an updated list with the commentary removed. However, there are still a number of these that are operational matters, not CapEx programs, not capital programs, and they shouldn't be in there. I don't think that council should be in a position that it sets a budget for a maintenance budget, and if it is not spent, that it just gets accumulated, which is effectively what some of this is. So even without the commentary associated with them, when something is labelled as maintenance and operational, it should never be in a capital program to be carried forward.
Through you, Chair, you're talking about the renewals. They are capital, but they're in the sort of like in the nature of operational in terms of being a sort of an ongoing sort of group of activities within that. So you're right, yeah.
If I may add a comment, Mr. Chairman. The examples would be, for instance, there's a wastewater reticulation O&M. What we're talking about there would be actual assets that fail. So that could be a pressure reducing valve. It could be electronic monitoring equipment, stuff that we don't know if it's going to fail or not. It is an asset. It's on the asset register and it is CapEx. It is a renewal of an asset. The problem is we can't foresee. It always happens, and we always need budget available to replace that asset if it fails because the whole network won't build.
If we have a water leak in a line, repairing it is not a capital program. And some of the commentary previously and labelling things operational and maintenance fits into that space. And that's where I have an issue.
Thank you. So councillor Loudon, would you say?
On my concern, that, we have over the last 3 or 4 years had significant carryovers. If the work doesn't get done, the cost goes up each time. And my concern is that, we're going backwards possibly. I would like to see in the workshop some really hard look at some of these things, because some things, as Councillor Wilson said, just don't get done. They can't get done. So what happens to that funding if it won't get done or can't get done? Does it go somewhere else?
Your answer to the question, please.
Depends on what project it is. If it's in the nature of your new asset or growth asset, then it's loan funded, and we only loan fund those when they actually occur. With regards to what we call renewals, which is replacing like with like, so you replace a pipeline of the same capacity with another pipeline of the same capacity, but that's funded from the depreciation that we rate for. And it's been a bit of an issue in the past where when you actually rate for it at in the year, and if you don't spend it in the year, what happens to the money? Well, I can tell you that in the background, we actually keep track of that. We've actually got what was called DIS funds, decline in service potential, which is the same as depreciation, it's just another way of saying. So we've got all these funds in our books, and we put the funded depreciation into these reserves, and we take out the expenditure in the reserves. We even allow interest on the money in there, and we keep track of that unspent or overspent or whatever it is in there. So it doesn't disappear into a big black hole like you might think, right?
Thank you. So, Councillor Duncan, did you?
No, I think Mr. Laws just answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So happy to discuss them in the workshop and see where we get this.
Through you, Chair, does the recommendation up there need to reflect that, just from a?
Yes, would someone use words? Please.
I mean, if the Chief Executive is happy that.
It's subject to any changes.
Subject.
Approves the carryover,
Yeah.
proposed carryover projects, subject to council consideration.
That raises a procedural question, and that Arno is quite flagged. If you pass all these forward as carryovers, then you're going to have a specific process on each one of them. Otherwise, council staff will go and potentially do the work on them next week.
Yeah, that's
This is
subject
council
to
consideration
this afternoon.
this
I'm seeking
afternoon.
to clarify this matter this afternoon after the workshop following this meeting.
Yeah, but the point is you won't have it, if you pass them now as carryovers, you're not going to have another council meeting to change it.
Won't we have it this afternoon? Does it have to be approved by full council? It's a council resolution of full council this afternoon.
You could say
Council
subject to
consider-
council consideration later
The
on.
Finance Performance Committee recommends that council consider the proposed
yeah, that's good.
carryovers.
Yeah, and that takes the approves there.
Just take approve and decline.
That'll be done this afternoon.
Am I moving?
Can I just have one more question?
Yes, Councillor.
Just something that's jumping out at me is lots and lots, like 5 question marks after how much has actually been spent on the grandstand. It says 250 grand. Big question mark, we don't know how much. Thank you, I know.
If I may answer that through you, Mr. Chairman, I was doing this late at night and I didn't have access to the actual budgets. I put those question marks in there hoping that somebody would see it and just go check.
That's all right.
No, somebody would go check the budget. I didn't have access late at night.
Thank you. Have we got clarifications?
Councillor Moore.
Just on the comment about comments, why were the comments removed? Because, you look at I've found the updated version, there's pretty much no context to why those overruns or underruns are there. And,
part of that through you, Mr. Chairman, is
Yes.
what Anna was saying, is it was, they were worked on, have been late, they're produced late. And they were officer comments with checkups and finding out. Any of those questions that you asked should be able to be answered today. So they're notes for us.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to move recommendation 1 and recommendation 2.
Thank you. A second for that? Councillor Shalom, second. All in favour? Aye. Yes. Carried. Reports and information?
You notice a new front end to the report this time, because I've added try and make the report easier to read, by putting a few graphs and things in there so that the committee can sort of see the progress being made. It's an initiative I put in, and whether we hope it will carry on during the year. Also, there was a lot of talk about the loan funding and internal loans and stuff, so I've put a sort of an extended report to explain external, internal and as opposed to external loans and the level that we've got. So I'm happy to have any questions about those if you're probably the first time you've seen them, suspect. But I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you. Are there any questions that we have about this report? Councillor Moore, really?
I did have a question about the rate of loan, and then I realised it's only every quarter,
Your worship?
1.2%, and it's 4.7. Read down.
In terms of page 23, the loan parcels, I'm presuming that we've already done some of the work on establishing which of these loan parcels we can split up in terms of the regional CCO setup. This dates through to 2029. So 27, 28 will be a watershed period in terms of the structure.
Through you, Chair, we have actually split those into the activities. If you go down into the internal, you'll see there that we've actually split the external loans into where they were spent. So the evidence is there for whatever organisation. However, the loans are in the name of the council, not the name of the CCO. So I'm not exactly sure how, and you can't transfer a loan from the council to a CCO. You can't do what they call notation of it. So those loans are going to stay with council regardless of what happens with the CCO. But when they'll get renewed, that's when the CCO will take them over. So how that process actually works, Your Worship, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be handled. But I know all I can tell you is that those loans will stay with the council because they can't be transferred. Right?
There's a legislation.
So, as I understand it, Straw is absolutely correct. You can't just swap one back to the entity. So they would sit with council, but you'll have a credit passed back to council in some shape or form. But in terms of understanding the the point I'm really wanting to make is understanding the financial position of council 28, 27 on is quite a complex beast in itself. And I absolutely appreciate, and I've labelled on my notes, great paper in terms of the loans by activity, because that is incredibly useful.
Has the legislation been?
No, but just through you too, is that there are other options through that. Local water's done well. It could be a business unit as well, so it could stay with the council. So and these are all iterative things.
Correct.
That's why it's such a complex beast. Explaining it to anybody until you get some of that more guidance that comes out through legislation, really tricky to give you total guidance. But I think Mayor Andy's quite clear that whatever happens, it shouldn't be a burden back on Rangitikei District if there was a CCO formed. That should be the credit.
And through you, Mr. Chair, the chief executive is absolutely correct. There are other options, but even if, for instance, we went alone, it would be likely that if we, unlikely to take that option in my mind, but even if you did, it'd probably involve setting up a CCO of council anyway. There's so many different variations of this.
Yeah, if you, Chair, the other thing I would suggest that the level of carryovers, going into the current year, we need to evaluate the impact that would have on our loan borrowing in the current year and for future years. So we just need to sort of remodel it to some degree, depending on the level of that, because it could by itself necessitate an amended LTP because of the level of carry forward. So you're likely to be doing an amended LTP anyway, so I don't think the issue is going to be a problem. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's actually a requirement to do rather than likelihood now.
Yeah. So that's something that needs to be modelled, so we know what position we're starting with. Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, good to hear.
Just with that thought in mind, and it's an interesting conversation as to who's going to own these loans. But looking at the maturity dates, there's a number of them, well, there's a couple there I suspect are going to fall before any CCO is set up. So is there consideration as to how that should be treated, as to whether or not what would happen in that respect?
Just through you though, it's the same what Mayor Andy was saying, is that even if you do a new loan, at some stage you'll get a credit back, or that's what's being proposed. Most likely to happen is if a CCO is formed, you'll get a credit back, whatever you do. You've still got to do your operations.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just wondering, do we need to be prudent in how that is done, or the value of which they are done, or whether or not to the full extent they are for the same amounts?
You certainly need to make sure that it's,
Yeah, no, I do.
you certainly need to make sure that they're allocated to the correct,
Yeah, that's
for the correct activity. That's crucial.
That's the point I'm making.
You don't want them sitting in a corporate, without being allocated to a Free Waters activity. You don't want to leave them in the treasury, so to speak, without being allocated. That would be the most important thing to do, I think.
Thank you.
And I don't know how the CCO would, the CCO might actually reimburse you for the interest servicing of the loans until they fall due. That would be one way of doing it, but I don't, without that station, I've got no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty effective. Thank you, Councillor Logan.
When the CCO pays back some of that loan, will we be paying back the loan? Is that would that be a requirement of?
Yeah, well,
That being paid back?
I can't answer your question, Councillor, because I'm not sure what the legislation is going to say about all that, because,
It would be, look, we've asked, we've reached out to Mark Butcher, LGFA, to come and present and explain to council. So it's a little bit of an academic conversation until that happens, but he's the expert in that field, so he's relied to us was try and find a time that fits with council, as I understand it.
If you want to reply to us?
Yeah, it was just a concern about the cumulative effect of borrowing to pay back the loan and re-borrowing, and what that means as an end point, continues on track.
The only thing I can say is that every councillor is in the same position.
I understand that.
Yeah, so somebody will be working on that issue at a global sense, and it's something that we just need to be on top of when
the council does repay the internal loans, which are inclusive of the external ones.
Yeah.
Like we budget for, it's over 25 years. So there is a repayment thing going on in the background. If you have a close look at some of the internal loans, you'll notice that balances for on page, what page is it? 26. Yeah, see the note, out the right-hand column's got the balance as at June 2023. If you compare that with the column on 2024, you'll see that some of the balances have reduced because of that repayments. Like for instance, if you look at underwater supply, Hunterville Urban, the balance at the end of June 23 was 538, but at the end of 24 was 517. So that's where your repayments of loans are coming through.
Thank you for the report. Mr. Law, that's something we haven't had before.
And the sustainability resolution there, I think you've had this before and just in a different format. It's really just covering all those LGFA covenants that we need to keep in mind. And the only addition is the balanced budget ratio that I'll put in there, but you've been budgeting for a deficit, so they'll never get over 100% in that for the whole year, I wouldn't think.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Moore?
I can't find it on my notes, but there was the operating deficit had increased from 7 to 9.5 million or something. That deficit gets covered by loans.
Only if we need the cash, yeah. Like if we have surplus cash, we don't borrow until we have to, basically. So, and that's where the internal loans are built up over a long period of time, is from surplus cash. Yeah.
Your worship.
Yeah, there is an article in finances around this and need to clarify. So what you're referring to is a $9.5 million loss. However, 5 million of it or thereabouts is a loss on asset value by way of revaluation. So that's not an
You talk about that this afternoon, councillor.
Yeah, so we'll do with it then, but it's incorrect.
Write some notes on it, but I can't find it.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just saying that because people are aligned and thinking that it's a loss operating position. It's not.
Doug, can you clarify, like at 2.2, you've got total operating revenues above the line, and then you've got expenses below the line. When capital expenditure below the line will suggest that our bank balance should be going up. And the bank balance going up, does that then get pushed into the internal loan production?
Well,
Are you talking about, or?
no, the bank balance fluctuates quite a bit depending on, whether you've got rates coming in or not, and it fluctuates between something like about 9 and 13 mil.
Yeah.
Just goes up and down. It's just like a 3-month cycle. You go up big with the rates coming in on every 3 months. And
So it's more of a timing thing, but this.
yeah, but that's really looking at all your expenditure, including things like depreciation, which is non-cash. So that it's not true to say that there's a one-to-one relationship with the cash. So it's there.
Councillor Duncan. Good question.
My question is, we're just about to go into having a new CFO. We've just had a different one before, and Doug, I'm listening to what you're saying and I've got great confidence in what you're saying. What impact does a new CFO have on a community, on a organisation such as ourselves? I mean, the treatment of these, of the way things are handled, is there going to be a large difference? Can there be a large difference, or is there actually a operating sort of manual that everyone goes by?
Leanne and I know each other very well, and I'm going to come back not next week but the week after, and Leanne and I'll do the transition period with her, and I know her really well, so I've got no doubts that she'll carry on doing the right stuff, and she's also, I actually looked at what she had done for Ashburton District Council before I produced these things. So she actually did like a matrix rather than a graph, but she was portraying the same information to her council in Ashburton. So what she was doing there will carry on in some shape or form, whether she uses a graph or whether she goes back to the matrix, I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lord.
I think I can honestly say there probably will be changes, with new fresh eyes that are going to look over it. And you will see everybody is different, but they are singing from the same song sheet. They have to do the same things, but there will be some differences, I think.
Thank you.
Have we been through the whole report, Mr. Lord? If there are no more questions, I would like to move that the report be received. Seconder, Mr. Charland, Councillor Charland. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, carried. TV report. Mr. Lord?
Yeah, it's the normal report you've had every month, so it's just an update on the statistics from QV. That's where they disclose how many houses how many divisions that they've done, so just give you a bit of an idea of what's happening in the market, real estate market as well. Compare with the rest of New Zealand, which is always interesting.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Law about this report? Because he didn't write it. It's, comments.
No, for comment, I will note that as of July, the number of new houses, if they'd been signed off in June, we'd be rating for them.
We have been ready. Still well done stuff. Thank you. No other questions? Can we move that it be received? Me, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Melbourne. All in favour? And it's carried. Public feedback performance report. Who has?
Yes. So we've got Joe in the seat, so what I outlined last time that we were going to have a look at what we provide in this report, and so Sophia and her team and Joe and her team have put this together. So Joe, you lead this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I take the report as received and read. As Carol has said, we've had a bit of a change in the way that we've put the report together, especially with the excellent help of Leah. So I'm open to questions.
And any feedback
On this report.
And that's what you want. If you want extra, if there's anything you don't want to see. Yeah. Sophia's in the room as well to listen and answer.
Your worship. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay.
No.
You should hear.
I got it there in my feedback report. Do we really only get feedback on public toilets? Do we not get any feedback on anything else? Because that's all that's listed. It's great that we've got great public toilets, but if that's the only level of feedback that we're getting, then that's quite disappointing.
Yeah.
People are talking about our parks and reserves and other beautiful spaces about our town. It's sad.
That is sad. So, Mr. Chair, that is sad. That is basically what we get from our whatever my feedback reports, and that's through people ringing and letting us know, and that's what they report about is actually our QR code is actually around our toilets and how great they are.
Councillor Melbourne.
Just regarding the Goimas, generally, what sort of topics are people asking council to give information on?
So there are so many different topics. There's not one thing. Lately we've had footage requests. We've had sign off quite a few lately. Just how much something costs, what's council involvement. One recently was, do we have something in our standing orders about workshops being open to the public? That was another one. So yeah, the Taxpayers Union are quite vocal on making sure that we're following protocols and costs and that sort of thing. So there is an absolute variety. Some of them are very personal, so an interaction they've had and they want more detail, or they've made a complaint and they want more detail around a certain service. So some of them are, we redact some of the information in it, but there is a myriad of things that we get requests about.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll make some comments there, then be interested in the Chief Executive's response. One of the issues that our council has faced is the way that we deal with questions. And the standing instruction to staff has been in the past to treat requests for information as an official Lagoima process. And that adds to the exasperation of people in the community, because that involves an official process and an official timelines. And if I ring up as a customer wanting to know, like a silly one, when the dump open hours are, and I'm taking an extreme here, but it's then treated as an official information request, and it goes through official type channels. I'm taking an absurd situation there, but there are I believe there are a number of requests that have previously been made for information to this council that could have been treated by way of a phone call and discussion rather than an official channel.
Yeah, just to comment on that is that I think we have changed that process to allow that the questions that may have been subject to a Lagoima, the only rider that we have to that, if it's in an official capacity that we think that may come back, you have to go through every channel for all the information that we have in the council to reply, because otherwise you're not giving the answer of all of that information, and it's those ones that take the time.
And just further to that, we also, those Lagoimas that we respond to that are not privacy related, are all on our website. So you can actually go and have a look. We've done that for the last 3 years. So you'll see the things. But to just make stuff front now is very skilled in being able to answer those really simple day-to-day questions, and we would not encourage that to go through the normal process now.
Tato, I just wanted to acknowledge the mahi that was done around Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, that collaborative approach between mana whenua and the council, and that was reflected in the engagement seen, levels seen in the social media space and just within the local communities. Just wanted to comment.
Thank you. Feedback to the appropriate. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I just want to say once again, I think this is really undervalued. This is really hard work getting this right. And there's so much that comes back to me through the social online stuff. And the one that really stuck out this last week was when there was the one about the recycling. And particularly in Taihape, we had a lot of people interacting and working and liking that. So thank you for all the work you do. Oh, and thank you for that email on the TikTok business too. That was very good.
No more comments on this subject? I move that public feedback for report be received. Seconder, please, Councillor Vaughan, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. That brings us to the end of the meeting in my time in the seat. But once again, thank you, Mr. Law, for all your work today, and also in the future, by the sounds of it, you won't be going away quite yet. So,
I've got plenty of time left with them yet.
okay. Thank you. The meeting's closed at 10:26. Thank you.